Let's have some fun today. Who was the Bills' best all-time draft pick from every round? I'm offering my selections and runners-up today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of Go Bills and Buffalo's Run, also the co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single show, I appreciate you being here very much. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of the NFL. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon today to get started. Well, folks, I do want to have some fun today on the podcast. We've had some really meaty conversations lately talking about players and prospects and what the Bills should do and what they shouldn't do. And I figured today would be a good opportunity to take a little bit of a stroll down memory lane and reflect on some of the best picks in franchise history. In fact, what we're doing is going round by round, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh, and I'm trying to identify who I think was the best pick the Bills ever made at that round. And so I'm going to give you my choice for the best pick in addition to three runners-up. So you can look at this as the Mount Rushmore of Bills draft picks for every round, and we're going to try to figure out who that top guy is. And this was fun to put together. Spent a lot of time, obviously, going through and researching in preparation for this. Thankful that I wrote the book Go Bills, which covers the entire history of the Buffalo Bills, and that gave me a lot of insight into who these picks should be. And I'm excited to share that all with you here today on the podcast. So let's get started. And look, we're going to start with the first round. I'm not going to go backwards. I'm not going to go 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We're going first round, second round, all the way to the seventh round. So here we are. Who was the Bills' best ever first round draft pick? I'll give you the runners up first, and then I'll give you the pick. Now listen, Josh Allen didn't make my runners up. I think it's only a matter of time before he's going to be in this, but I've got 4 Hall of Famers that the Bills drafted in the first round that I have to give credit to here in this conversation. So my first, or I guess these are the runners-up. They're not ranked. One of my runners-up is Joe DeLamielleure. The Bills drafted him in 1973, a guard out of Michigan State, a member of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, also a Bills Wall of Famer, 6-time Pro Bowl selection, and he was a big part of that early 1970s, or really throughout the 1970s, rushing offense that was really special with O.J. Simpson carrying the football and the Electric Company, right? That was the nickname of the offensive line. Joe DeLamielleure was very much the star of the unit. Pro Football Hall of Famer, one of my runners-up. Another runner-up is O.J. Simpson, running back, USC, 1969. The Bills picked him in the first round, was the NFL MVP in 1973. First player in NFL history to top 2,000 rushing yards in a single season. 5-time Pro Bowl selection. He led the NFL in rushing 4 different times. Member of the Bills Wall of Fame. Over 10,000 rushing yards during his time with the Buffalo Bills, which ranks second in franchise history behind Thurman Thomas. Another runner-up is Jim Kelly. You guys know about him, right? Quarterback, Miami, 1983. Another Pro Football Hall of Famer, another Bills Wall of Famer, the Bills' all-time leading passer, 5-time Pro Bowler. His number 12 is retired by the organization. And, of course, he quarterbacked the Bills to 4 consecutive Super Bowl appearances. You can't tell the story of the Buffalo Bills without Jim Kelly obviously being a big part of that. But my choice for best Bills first-round pick of all time is who I think is the best Buffalo Bill of all time, and that is Bruce Smith, defensive end, Virginia Tech, 1985. Bruce Smith, a Pro Football Hall of Famer, Bills Hall of Famer, the NFL's all-time leader in sacks with 200, an 11-time Pro Bowl selection, was twice named the NFL Defensive Player of the Year, and of course, his number 78 jersey retired by the team. This is a little fun story that I've uncovered in kind of studying the history of the Bills. When the Bills owned the number 1 pick in 1985, the Buffalo News put out a poll for people to vote on who they wanted the Bills to pick with that top selection. And Bruce Smith was not even close to the preferred choice. In fact, 72% of people voted for Doug Flutie, Heisman Trophy winning quarterback from Boston College. Obviously, the Bills didn't make him the pick, but 72% of people who voted wanted Doug Flutie. Number 2 was Bill Fralick, who had a really good career with the Atlanta Falcons, 4 Pro Bowls. And number 3 was Bruce Smith, who wound up being the NFL's all-time leading sacker, one of the greatest defensive players in the history of the game. So that's my choice for the Bills' best first-round pick of all time. Let's move on to the second round here, where you got a couple Hall of Famers here as well. So my runners-up, we'll start with Billy Shaw, guard, Georgia Tech, 1961. Bills Hall of Famer, Pro Football Hall of Famer. And here's a really fun fact about Billy Shaw. He is the only player ever inducted to the Pro Football Hall of Fame without ever playing in the NFL. How cool is that? Obviously, his historic career started with the Bills when they were in the AFL. And the merger happened in 1970, and that was after Billy Shaw stopped playing. But he was an 8-time Pro Bowl selection, was regarded as one of the most dominant blockers of his era. Another runner-up here is Fred Smearless, defensive tackle, Boston College. Bills picked him in the second round in 1979. 5-time All-Pro and Pro Bowl selection. Bills Hall of Famer, played in 162 games for the Bills, 152 starts. He was like the 80s version of Kyle Williams, I think. Obviously, he had a little bit of a time there later with the team where they had some success, just like Kyle Williams, right? But in a not great era of Bills football, Fred Smearless was something to be proud of with what he did as the Bills nose tackle there in that 3-4 defense there in the 80s. Another runner-up that I have is Darryl Talley, outside linebacker, 1983 from West Virginia. Bills Hall of Famer, was a 2-time Pro Bowler and All-Pro selection, played in 188 games, which is the 6th most in franchise history. Started 160 of those across 12 seasons. Obviously a big staple of the Bills defense there in the 80s into the early 90s. But the best second-round pick that the Buffalo Bills ever made, Thurman Thomas, running back, Oklahoma State, 1988. Was the NFL MVP and Offensive Player of the Year in 1991. 5-time Pro Bowl selection, part of the NFL's all-decade team for the 1990s. Of course, Pro Football Hall of Famer, Bills Hall of Famer, and his jersey is retired by the team. That number 34 is retired. And, of course, he's the Bills' all-time leading rusher, which is pretty impressive when you consider O.J. Simpson is a player that spent a good number of years for the Buffalo Bills. So Thurman Thomas, my choice for best second-round pick in franchise history. We're going to get to the rest of the picks here, 3rd, 4th, 5th round in the next segment here. A lot of fun players to talk about. But first, let me tell you about a fun snack, and that's the Built Bars. Folks, these things are delicious. They're low in sugar. They're low in calories. They're high in protein, and they are delicious. They're all covered in 100% real dark chocolate. They're absolutely delicious. So many great flavors. They have churro, peanut butter brownie, cookies and cream. They got brownie batter puffs. They have so many great flavors, and it's like eating a candy bar, but they're actually good for you. If you're looking for more lean protein in your diet, and I think we all are, check out Built Bars. And look, you can go to Built.com and order them, but you also can pick them off the shelf from your local Walmarts or Sam's Club, and you can take home a box. So if you're looking for them now, head on over to one of those stores or order them from built.com. You'll thank me later. These things are awesome. All right, so let's get to the third round, the Bills' best ever pick in the third round. One of my runners-up is Glenn Parker, guard from Arizona. The Bills picked him in 1990, was a staple in the Bills' offensive line for a number of years there in the 90s. Eugene Marv is another one of my runners-up here. Linebacker from Saginaw Valley State, 1982. The Bills picked him in the third round. Was a 74-game starter across 6 seasons with the Bills, led the Bills in tackles 3 different times, and he had a good career not with the Bills as well. An 11-year total career, 126 starts, did well for himself. My next runner-up is Ben Williams, defensive end from Mississippi, 1985. Was a Pro Bowler one time, and he was a player that started 140 games for the Bills at defensive end. He had 3 double-digit sack campaigns, and his 52 sacks ranked 7th all-time in team history. But my choice for the Bills' best third-round pick ever is quarterback Joe Ferguson out of Arkansas in 1973. Joe Ferguson, third-round pick, was instantly the Bills' starting quarterback and held the job for 12 years. A 12-year starting quarterback in the third round. He's on the Bills Wall of Fame. No quarterback in team history has played more games than Joe Ferguson. Number 2 in franchise history for passing yards and passing touchdowns. He led the league in passing yards in 1977. Had the most passing touchdowns in the league in 1975. I think Joe Ferguson's probably the most underrated Bill of all time. I've said this before, but in researching the history of the team, I gained so much appreciation for him. It felt like he was very much ahead of his time and was the beneficiary early on in his career. I think his rookie season was OJ's 2,000 yards. So he certainly had that rushing attack to lean on, but, he lasted longer than OJ Simpson and was the quarterback well into the early 80s. Some difficult years, obviously, but he was pretty productive and showed a lot of toughness on the field and toughness off the field as well with some of the medical issues he's overcome as well. So Joe Ferguson, my choice here for the Bills' best ever third round pick. 12-year starter at quarterback, third round. Pretty impressive. Moving on to the fourth round here. We got a really good group of players here in the fourth round. My runners-up include Stu Barber, offensive tackle, 1961 out of Penn State. He actually came to the Bills in 1961 and played linebacker, was a starting linebacker. And then in 1962, he switched to offensive tackle, and he held the job for 8 years and collected 5 different Pro Bowls. And, of course, those AFL championship teams, Stu Barber, one of your starters there. Butch Bird, another one of my runners-up for best fourth-round pick of all time. Butch Bird, a safety from Boston University, selected in 1964. 5-time Pro Bowler. He's the Bills' all-time leader in interceptions with 40. He leads the team in interception return yards with 666. And he has the most interceptions returned for a touchdown with 5. For some reason, he's not on the Bills' Wall of Fame, but another one of the most underrated players in franchise history. One of my favorite Buffalo Bills of all time comes in as one of my runners-up here, and that's Terrence McGee, cornerback, Northwestern State, 2003. Obviously was a great kick returner, an absolute stud, one of the best in the game during his time, but he was really good at corner too. In fact, he's the Bills' franchise all-time leader in passes defended with 99 and career fumble return yards with 106. But my pick for the best ever fourth-round pick in Buffalo Bills history is none other than Hall of Famer Andre Reed out of Kutztown, 1985. He's the Bills' all-time leading receiver, Pro Football Hall of Famer, Bills Wall of Famer, selected to 7 Pro Bowls. And here's a fun fact that I really like about Andre Reed. No player in franchise history has played in more games than his 221. So Andre Reed, my choice for best fourth-round pick of all time. Let's move on to the fifth round here, and things get a little bit more challenging here later on, where the Bills don't have that many late-round steals, especially when we get to the sixth round. But the fifth round, we got some good choices here. We'll start with my runners-up. Justin Bannon, actually, defensive tackle, Colorado, 2002. Spent his first 4 seasons with the Bills, and they were pretty forgettable. But then he went on to play 8 more seasons, including some really good years with Denver and Baltimore. And so I had to have 3 runners up, including my choice. And so that wasn't a great choice, but there wasn't a lot of great options as well to consider. So I went with Justin Bannon. 2 very worthy runners up here. We'll get to Donnie Green, offensive tackle, Purdue, 1971. He was part of the Electric Company as well with Joe DeLamielleure. He was the right tackle. Dave Foley was the left tackle. And Donnie Green was a starter for 6 seasons, and obviously a big reason why O.J. Simpson was able to have the success that he did, including that 2,000-yard season. My next runner-up in the 5th round, somebody you guys know well, Matt Milano, linebacker, Boston College, 2017. He's essentially been a 6-year starter for the Bills, an impact starter, I think we can all agree. Finally got some recognition last year with Pro Bowl honors, All-Pro honors, and just signed a contract extension with the Bills. So he's going to be around for a while. But the best 5th-round pick in franchise history, you know who this is going to be. Kyle Williams, defensive tackle, LSU, 2006, a 6-time Pro Bowl selection. Was the heart and soul of the team for a long time, right? Some dark years there. A lot of really bad football teams, but Kyle Williams always gave us something to be proud of. And I love that he was able to finish his career with Sean McDermott, was part of the team making the playoffs in 2017. Just a phenomenal career and a player that will always be revered by Bills Mafia. 12-year career, 8th all-time in franchise history with 48.5 sacks. So obviously the production, everything you could want in a football player, you got in Kyle Williams. All right, we got the 6th and the 7th round coming up here after a quick break. All right, folks, I'm not going to lie. The 6th and the 7th round was pretty tough, especially the 6th round. That was absolutely the hardest round for me to come up with 4 worthy players to mention here on the podcast. Actually, the 7th round was a lot easier than the 6th round. So let's work through it. And if you're going to roll your eyes at some of these picks, I challenge you to go through the inventory and see if you have better options. So it gets a little dicey here, but my runners up for the 6th round. We'll start with Arthur Moats, linebacker, James Madison, 2010. Spent his first 4 seasons of his career with the Buffalo Bills, was a depth player for his first 3, and then started his 4th season, and then he got a chance to go to the Pittsburgh Steelers and wound up having a bigger role and making an impact, and had a nice career for himself, and certainly a highly respected locker room leader, great for the community. Have a lot of respect for Arthur Moats. The next player, John Skorupin, linebacker, Penn State, 1973. He was my pick for one of my 3 linebackers in the Bills 1970s all-decade team. So if you have the book Go Bills, you can see that. If you'd like to get the book Go Bills, head on over to Amazon or wherever books are sold. You can pick up a copy. But he started 50 games across 5 seasons, recorded 8 sacks, 2 interceptions, and 4 fumble recoveries. My next runner-up, Corbin Lucina, guard from Augustana, 1993, 6th-round pick. Had a 10-year career in the NFL, started 80 games, 28 of them with the Buffalo Bills. He'll be most remembered for his time with the Minnesota Vikings, but a 10-year career, a lot of games started, 6th-round pick, pretty impressive. And my choice for Bill's best 6th-round pick of all time, and hopefully this can change very quickly, is actually Dusty Ziegler, center from Notre Dame, 1996. Started 44 games for the Bills, 34 more for the Giants. So look, the Bills haven't been doing so well in the 6th round is what you could take away from that. I'm I'm not in love with those choices. But, folks, like I said, I challenge you to go through the inventory and tell me who I should have picked there for the 6th round. Now, the 7th round, we got a much better story to tell here. Some good players here, actually. My runners-up, we'll start with L.B. Miller, center, Syracuse, 1961. Spent all 9 seasons with the Bills, Pro Bowler in 1965. He never missed a game. Started 123 out of 126 games for his career, obviously part of the 2 AFL championship teams in the 60s. My next runner-up is Bob Chandler, wide receiver, USC, 1971. Second team All-Pro in 1975 and 1977. He's actually 9th all-time in Bills history with 3,999 receiving yards. One of the favorite targets of Joe Ferguson there in the 70s. My next runner-up is Kurt Schultz, safety, Eastern Washington, 1992. He was actually on the bench, I think, for his first 3 seasons. Became a starter in 1995, and this guy was a ball hawk. 21 interceptions in 72 starts. That's a lot. And then he went on, I think he played for the Lions, maybe some other teams as well, but Kurt Schultz can intercept the football. But my choice for the Bills' best 7th round pick of all time, Stevie Johnson, wide receiver, Kentucky, 2008. One of the craziest stats in my mind in the history of the Bills is that Stevie Johnson was the first ever player to record consecutive 1,000-yard receiving seasons. But he actually wound up doing it 3 times. So prior to 2012, so Stevie did it in 10, 11, and 12. No other player had back-to-back 1,000-yard receiving seasons. Not James Lofton, not Eric Moulds, not Andre Reed, not Peerless Price, not Bob Chandler, not Albert the Bunyan. Nobody. Stevie Johnson's the first one to do it. Now, obviously, Steph Diggs has done that, right? He's been on the team for 3 years. He's going to have 1,000 yards every year that he's healthy. But it took a long time for the first ever consecutive guy to do it, Stevie Johnson. And look, the list is still pretty small. It's just Stevie Johnson and Stefon Diggs. Pretty crazy. He's 10th all-time in receiving yards for the Buffalo Bills. So to recap here, the best ever first-round pick, Bruce Smith. Best ever second-round pick, Thurman Thomas. Best ever third-round pick, Joe Ferguson. Best ever fourth-round pick, Andre Reed. 5th round, Kyle Williams. 6th round, well, yeah, Dusty Ziegler. And 7th round, Stevie Johnson. I hope you enjoyed this, folks. This was fun to research and put together, and it's always fun to kind of bring up some of these old names and remember those players and think about them. And, it was kind of cool to see just where some of the biggest hits were in franchise history when it comes to the draft. And honestly, also seeing where they haven't been able to really find steals in certain areas as well. So I hope you enjoyed. I hope you'll come on back tomorrow. We're talking Buffalo Bills football for you once again. As always, I kindly ask that you share, subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills, and I look forward to catching up with you again tomorrow.